We've all heard the statistic that 50% of marriages end in divorce. Actually, that's a myth. First, in no way does that mean that your particular marriage only has a 50% chance of lasting a lifetime. It simply means that at one point in our nation's history, a couple of decades ago, for every 2 marriages in a given year, there was 1 divorce. And the divorce rate was half that of the marriage rate. This phenomenon occurred on the heels of court rulings that gave women more authority and control in filing for divorce proceedings. When women were given the chance, they were finally able to end a bad marriage. I mean, imagine being stuck in an abusive marriage or knowing that your spouse is cheating and not being able to do anything about it. In reality, however, the divorce rate has been on the decline, dropping around 18% over the past decade. Why? Well, because newly married young people are staying together longer. True, fewer young adults are currently married than ever before because they're functioning under the mindset of if it's just going to end in divorce, then why bother? But those who do choose to get married are remaining more faithful to each other than compared to couples of previous generations. And this may come as no surprise, but infidelity is still listed as the top specific reason for divorce at nearly 30%. Unfortunately, those statistics are not much different for couples who are regular church attenders. We're all familiar with Exodus chapter 20, verse 14. It says, "You shall not commit adultery." The positive intention behind the "shall not" is to uphold and honor the covenant of marriage. God railed against the apathetic treatment of wedding vows in the prophetic book of Malachi. He says, "Has not the one God who made you? You belong to him in body and spirit. And what does the one God seek? Godly offspring. So be on your guard and do not be unfaithful to the wife of your youth. The man who hates and divorces his wife, says the Lord, the God of Israel, does violence to the one he should protect, says the Lord Almighty. So be on your guard and do not be unfaithful." Did you catch that line? It says the man who hates and divorces his wife does violence to the one he should be protecting. And this is where we need to speak wisdom into the subject of adultery and unfaithfulness and divorce. Adultery does not just mean sexual immorality. Adultery is not just about sex. Adultery is about breaking a covenant. Israel was often called an adulterous nation for breaking their covenant with God by worshiping other gods, or mistreating the poor, or abusing the sacrificial system, or taking advantage of people through unbalanced weights and measures, and it could go on and on. See, Israel was in a covenant with God, and they broke that covenant, and they were labeled adulterers. Marriage is not just a financial or a social institution. It's a covenantal arrangement between a man and a woman and God. And to break that covenant is to commit adultery. Yes, by sleeping around, but also by abusing your spouse, by neglecting them, by doing violence against the one you should protect. In the days of Jesus, there was a great debate on this issue. Some took the side of Rabbi Hillel, who taught that a man could divorce his wife for basically any reason. He emphasized the phrase, "who becomes displeasing to him." Others took the side of Rabbi Shammah, who taught that marital unfaithfulness was the only legal grounds for divorce. Well, whose side did Jesus take? I'm glad you asked that. Some Pharisees came to him to test him, and they asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason?" Jesus replied, "Haven't you read that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, 'For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become flesh'? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man separate." Well, they asked Jesus, "Why then did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away?" And Jesus replied, "Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery." See, even though Jesus wasn't married himself, he upheld the importance of marriage. Faithfulness to one's spouse goes hand in hand with one's faithfulness to God. That's why Jesus said such radical things as, you have heard that it was said you should not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right hand causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. In other words, don't even think about cheating on your spouse, because eventually thoughts will become actions. Now, you might be thinking, David, you're supposed to be a middle school minister. Why are you talking about marriage? Well, here's my thinking behind it. This has got to start somewhere. Changing this has got to start somewhere. And I'm afraid that we're teaching our children, perhaps indirectly, that if something is too hard, you can just quit. And if you're married, then you and I both know marriage can be hard. I've watched as students seem less and less committed to anything other than sports. Our society as a whole has lost the importance of commitment. Absolutely commit to that until something better comes along. So you can see why these commandments are so important. God wanted to ensure a thriving society for his people. So when cultures fail to honor their family commitments, when they treat human life as expendable, when they cease to uphold their wedding vows, and society begins to break down. Life, marriage, family, these things should be honored and kept sacred for our own good and for the good of society.